Hello guys, welcome to this lecture. We're going to be talking about the file system organization in the Unix environment. Okay, and to do that, we're going to explore the command line interface and then the graphic user interface. This is the command line interface. Okay, so that is the interface that allows you to enter commands and then you get an output. And then this is a graphic user interface. This one allows you to use your mouse. You can right click, create a folder, click, and then move files with your mouse. So when we talk about the graphic user interface, this is it. And then this green one is a command line interface. Let's go back to our notes and see what these things mean. Okay, files in a Linux system are arranged in a hierarchical directory structure. The first directory in the file system is called the root directory, represented by the /. All data in Unix is organized into files. All files are organized into directories, and these directories are organized into a tree-like structure called the file system. Alright, now, and in this file system, there are three types of files. There are the ordinary files, there are directories, and then there are special files. But let us go and understand what these things mean in the graphic user interface and then in the command line interface. Let's start with the GUI. Okay, as we understood, in the Unix system, the first or foundational directory is the root. No matter where you are in the system, your foundation is the root. So every folder, whether it's a configuration file, whether it's an application folder, whatever file, even the operating system, is built on what is known as a root. So if you look at the graphical interface over here, you see that the very foundation of this entire operating system is a root, and every application that runs on the system or the computer runs upon the root. Okay, so for instance, these folders you see, there are libraries, there are system files, then there are the users of this computer, and then there are applications. As you can see, I have several applications on my computer, and everything is built upon the root. Now, when we come to the users folder, you realize that I have three users on this computer. I have Leonard, I have Moonspeed, and I have the shared users. Let's say I want to find out what is inside this directory. Okay, when I click on it, it opens. So as you are realizing, the file is organized in a tree system. So this Moonspeed directory is inside this users directory, and then this users directory is inside the root, and the root is the foundation of it all. So as you can see, it's like a tree system. Directories are inside directories, and you can keep going and on and on and on and on. For instance, I can decide to open one of my files. I can open web projects, and then within web projects we have test site, several files. So as you are seeing here right now, you realize that the Unix system is arranged hierarchically, and it goes back all the way to the root. The root is the foundation of it all, and in the command line interface, the root is represented by a /. So let us go to the command line and then understand how the system works over there. Okay, for instance, let me just put them side by side so that we can see the operation. Great, so I have my graphic user interface here and I have my command line interface here, and as you can see, the current user of this command line is Moonspeed, and this is Moonspeed over here. When I print working directory, if you do not understand the command print working directory, don't worry, in our next lecture we'll be talking about the commands. Okay, so I'm just gonna print working directory. It tells you which current directory you are standing in. Okay, so currently I'm inside this directory. The directory is the same as a folder in a Windows system. So when you hear me say directory, I'm simply referring to what the Windows system calls a folder. They are one and the same thing. All right. So you realize that when I printed the working directory, it tells me that I came from the root. The root is represented by the first /. So this is the root right over here. I wish I could make it bigger, but this is the biggest it could get. Then from the roots we come to users, and this is the users we have right over here. Then from the users, we come to moonspeed. Okay. Now, if I want to find out what is inside moonspeed, when I click on it, you realize I have so many files inside this directory moonspeed. Okay. In the command line, when we want to find out what kind of files are inside the directory, we use the command ls. So now when I ls, you realize that the same files in here are the same files we are seeing over here. For instance, you can see some HTML files, and these HTML files are right over here. You can see there is HTML file 3, file 2, there is leo.html, there is file 2, file 3, and all the files, there's leo.html, and all the files in here are the same files that are displayed on the command line over here. There is this folder called web projects. Okay, now if you look at the command line over here, we see the same web projects directory over here. On the graphic user interface, when we clicked on it, we realize that we have another folder inside the web project called test site. So let me clear my screen, and then let's try and change the directory into the web project and then access this directory. And let's see how you do that on the command line. So I'm just going to change directory into web projects. Then I enter. As you can see on the command line, now I have come from moonspeed and I have entered the web projects directory. So now when I ls, you realize that this test site directory you see over here is displayed on the command line. So actually, whatever is happening in the command line is also happening in the system. Let's say I want to create a file inside this web projects directory. So let me create a file and let's see what happens. I'm just going to create a file and I'm going to call it test.html. Now when I enter, look at what just happened. This file that I created just appeared over here. Okay, now when I cd into the test site, you realize that on the graphic user interface, the test site also has files inside it. So when I ls over here, you realize that I have the test site and then the file I just created. Now let me change the directory into the test site. Let me just cd into the test site, and then I'm going to list out the files within it, and you realize that the same folders or directories I have here in the file are the same things that are displayed over here. So I have fonts, there are fonts here, I have images, scripts, and you can see they are all displayed over here. Now let's say I want to delete a file. Let me clear my screen. Okay, I'm going to ls again so that we can see clearly. Let's say I'm going to delete this file index.html. You can see the file is over here in the graphic user interface. Now I'm going to delete this file on a command line and let's see what happens. So I'm going to remove index.html, and now when I enter, as you can see, the file just disappeared over here. Now when I ls, realize that index.html is gone. Let me create that file again. I'm going to attach index.html, and now when I enter, the file just appeared here again. I just created it. So what I'm trying to show you here is that whatever you are doing on the command line, it's actually happening in the operating system. So I could also decide to create a new folder here, and I'm going to call it, let's call it anything. Let's say test.css. Okay, I've created a new folder here. Now this folder that I created, I'm going to ls over here and let's see what happens. As you can see, the test.css has appeared in my directory. So basically what we are trying to learn here is that in the Linux system, the file system is hierarchical, and everything you are doing on the command line, you are doing it in the operating system. You can either do it here or do it here. So the question is, if I can do it here and it's so easy, why will I waste my time and kind of confuse myself over here? But as you advance, you realize that there are certain commands that are so easier to work with on the command line interface. Let's say you want to move thousands of files with a certain extension. The easiest way you can do it over here in the command line. It's so easy, you just have to use a flag, and we'll learn about that very soon. But if you have to do the same thing over here, you are going to struggle. So for simple commands, it is easier to go with the graphic user interface, but for advanced commands and complex commands, you realize it's easier to do it on the command line. So now there's one more thing I want you to see. I'm just going to print my working directory and you see what happens. Look at this. So you realize that I came all the way from the root. So let's go back here. I came from the root, Great. From the root, then I came to users. You can see everything displayed right here. Then to users, then from users I come to Moonspeed. Then from Moonspeed I came to web project, and it's displayed here. Then from web projects I came to test site. Like I'm here in test site. Okay. Then in test site I can even decide to cd more into any of the files over here. Let me clear my screen. And I'm gonna cd from here. I'm gonna cd into, let's say, fonts. Okay, and I enter. When I print my working directory again, you realize that the same path has been listed out for me. Now this path you see over here is what is called the path to this file. So assuming I wanted to do something concerning, it's a folder, sorry, it's a directory. Assuming I wanted to do something concerning this directory, I can't just come and write font. I would have to list the entire path before I can access this directory. Okay, now inside the font, let's ls and see what is inside it. We have Open Sans in here. Let me click on the fonts, and as you can see, there's Open Sans folder. Now when I print a working directory, you realize it gives me the path to this Open Sans folder, and you can keep going on and on and on. But what you need to remember and take note here is that everything ends in the root. The root is the foundation of it all. So when you want to list an absolute file path, you have to start from the root and list the path all the way to the folder or to the directory or file you are looking for. This is very important. Let's go back to our notes and read a few things. So like we saw, in Linux, the root is the highest level of file system hierarchy and is denoted by a /, as we saw in a command line interface. So this is the root. This first / is the root. It is the top level directory in the file system, and all other files and directories are organized beneath it in a tree-like structure, just as we saw. The root directory contains all other directories and files in the file system. It is where the operating system and all its associated files and directories are stored. This includes file systems. This includes system files, configuration files, device files, and other important files needed for the functioning of the operating system. So you see, everything is embedded in the root directory. In Linux, the root directory is also the starting point for file path names, as we saw. Now the Windows system operates differently in the sense that it can split files into different tree systems, but Linux always has one tree founded in the root. In the Linux system, when you go back, you always end up in the root. Okay, this is very important to understand. Now let's find out what the home directory is. In Linux, the tilde character, which is this character, is a shorthand notation for the home directory of the current user. Now, what do we mean by that? If you look at, let me just cd tilde so that you understand what this means. Now, when I enter, you realize that it brings me straight back to the user Moonspeed. The reason why this is so is that this tilde sign represents the home directory of the current user. So whenever I log into my shell, it brings me straight to Moonspeed. You realize that behind Moonspeed, when I print my working directory, I actually have the root, users, and Moonspeed. And then there are other users, as we saw in the system. So you realize that from the root, there are other users over here. But it brings me straight to Moonspeed over here. And that is because that is my home directory. Moonspeed in this system is the current user. So whenever you cd to tilde this sign, it brings you straight to your home directory. So you want to find out on your system who is the current user, just cd to tilde and find out who is the current user on your system. Now finally, in this lecture, we want to talk about the super user. Now, who is the super user? The super user is the one who controls the root. We already know what the root is. Okay, so let me use the graphical interface to explain. This is the root, and then there are a few users on this system. Okay, so the user that has control of the root is the one referred to as the super user. Now, this super user has administrative privileges and can control all the file systems. This super user is the one that can mess with the operating system. That is how come it's even dangerous to operate as a super user on the system if you're working. It's better to rather log in and assume the super user just in case you want to control administrative stuff on the system. However, when you are operating as a super user, you have to be very careful because you have access to every file on the system. You even have access to configuration files, and you can mess up with your operating system because you have control of the root. And remember, the root is the foundation of every file in the Unix system. Now, in the command prompt, when you realize that your sign, okay, in the shell prompt is the pound sign rather than the dollar sign, it means you're operating as a super user. Let me clear my screen here. So you realize that here in my shell, I have the dollar sign over here. It means that I am not operating as a super user. When this dollar sign is appearing as the pound sign in your terminal or shell, it means that you're operating as a super user. You have administrative privileges. You must be careful not to delete some files, or not to overwrite some files, because you have administrative privileges over all the file systems. Till this point, we have laid very important foundations in the Unix architecture. In our next lecture, we are now going to delve into various commands, what the commands do, what you can do with them, and how to manipulate files. So we are now going to delve into the Unix system proper. See you in the next lecture.